One of the most popular videos on this channel was my review for the Akai MPK Mini MK2. It has a small footprint that makes it incredibly portable, packs a ton of features, and comes at an excellent price point without making the unit feel cheap. It's no surprise that this keyboard was a best-selling mini-MIDI keyboard everywhere, and Akai finally released a new version after 5 years. But there's a ton of brands competing for your dollars in the portable mini-MIDI controller space. Is it worth a buy in 2022? Let's find out. Keys. Let's start out with the most important aspect of a MIDI keyboard and check out the actual keys on the MPK Mini's 3rd generation unit. As with most keyboards in this size, you get 25 keys total spanning 2 octaves. There are octave plus and octave buttons that allow you to move across 4 octaves up or down for a total of 10 octaves, plenty of keys to work with for whatever instrument you want to play. A nice feature is that the light blinks to indicate your position whenever you press one of the octave buttons based on what octave you're currently at. For example, if you're 2 octaves down from middle C, the octave button will blink twice. This is great for most bedroom producers, but don't get it wrong, this is primarily for one-handed playing to create basic melodies and chords. If you have any sort of experience playing the keys and are primarily a two-handed keyboardist who needs 3-4 octaves at once, this keyboard probably isn't for you. The MK3 improves upon the MK2's keyboard. It's not semi-weighted, which I've actually come to prefer more over the years, as my fingers don't get as tired while composing, but there's more key travel when you press a note. It's also not as noisy as the previous generation's keys, which is a plus. However, the sharp/flat keys, the black notes in between the white ones, do feel a little bit too tiny and plastic white for my taste. Not a huge deal breaker by any means, but something you might want to keep in mind. One thing I noticed is that this keyboard is a fingerprint magnet, which becomes especially obvious if you purchase one of the models with black keys. It doesn't affect performance, and it's nothing that a cheap microfiber cloth can't fix, but some producers might want to take this into consideration when choosing a colorway. Let's talk about the joystick. As you probably know by now, one of the unique features in the MPK Mini is the decision to forgo pitch bend and mob wheels for a joystick. It's an improvement over the MK2, as this generation gives you more resistance, making it easier to control. You'll still have to be a bit more precise with your movements than you normally would so you don't accidentally modulate while pitch bending, simply because it's quite easy to mess with both the X and Y axis movements of the joystick. However, it does feel quite fun once you accumulate to it, which took me about a day or two. Now, as much as I like the feel of the keys, this keyboard has one huge drawback. I found the keyboard's default velocity curves to be quite poor. Maybe this is just my lack of keyboard experience, but it was very difficult to get a relatively consistent velocity with the default settings. The slightest change in force when pressing the keys could result in a loud note or a very soft one. It's pretty frustrating, to say the least. Pads. One of the great features about the Akai MPK Mini MK3 is that it comes with 8 pads, which is quite a unique feature for a keyboard of its size. If you need more than that, you can easily press a button to change banks, giving you a total of 16 pads to play with. The pads are full size, so it's much easier to play than the pads on, say, the Novation Launchkey Mini. Akai upgraded the pads in this generation's model to be the same pads as they have on their MPC. They are a little stiffer and firmer than it was in the MK2, but it is more responsive and tactile than the previous generations. I would wager that the MPK Mini MK3 has the best pads in any mini-MIDI controller at this price point. There's also note repeat and arpeggiator buttons for use with both the pads and the keys. Syncing the keyboard to your DAW BPM settings is as simple as pressing and holding down the note repeat button, then moving knob 6. In my opinion, these buttons aren't actually that useful, as I've actually never used them in my life. I would personally much prefer it if the MPK Mini used this space for transport controls instead, so you can control your DAW. Another great thing about the pads is that it can multitask. While you can map them to your software to play drums, you can also use them to play melodies by pressing the prime select button and selecting either the major scale mode or minor scale mode. While not as versatile as other controllers with a more robust option that allows you to choose the key, this is still great for those who aren't as well versed in music theory or are complete newbies to it, as I once was, as you can jam on random notes without ever worrying if you're out of key. Nouns. The great reason to upgrade to the MPK Mini MK3 is the new generation encoders. As opposed to the MK2's knobs that only rotate 270 degrees, the MK3's encoders allow you to rotate endlessly in one direction or the other. I personally love using knobs while designing sounds or mixing, so the endless encoders in the MK3 allow much more freedom of expression since you're not limited by how much the encoder can turn. If you use a program such as FL Studio, Studio One or Reason, You can easily assign these knobs to anything you like within your DAW. You may have to take the time to set them up and save yourself a template depending on the program you're using, but this endeavor is well worth the effort. The OLED screen. Another new feature in the MPK Mini MK3 is the introduction of the new OLED screen. This is one of the most notable features in this generation, and proves to be quite useful while navigating your DAW with the keyboard. The screen is bright and easy to read, and gives you an idea of the parameters you're controlling on the keyboard itself without having to look at your computer screen. I do find it strange that Akai decided to display the MIDI note number instead of the actual note value when hitting the pads, i.e. C#3, which I personally would have found to be more useful, but it's not a deal-breaker by any means. With all that said, Akai's MPK Mini MK3 is an excellent MIDI keyboard for a lot of people. It comes with everything that a complete newbie to beatmaking would need, and it's excellent for those who need a small, portable rig for live performances. Producers who need drum pads and knobs on their MIDI controllers would find this model to be a great bang for their buck as well.